again. Thanks.
Has the finger improved greatly?
You're sweet to have that on the top of your mind. It has improved greatly.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah. Could be 3 by now.
Is it 3?
Still, I have the suspicion that there may be some permanent alteration, but nothing significant.
Good.
It works, you know.
Yeah. And you're not in pain anymore, right?
No, I mean it hurts when I.
It feels like you've got resistance in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And a pain in a sort of sore kind of way,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not in.
Not that sharp pain.
Yeah. I don't think I got these out before, but these are the cards. They're very cool. Nice, well made, and useful. And there's plenty of them, of course.
Go ahead first.
You can,
Oh, nice, yeah.
They're a little bit too big to shuffle.
A little bit, yeah.
It's a real cast.
Oh, the quality, the weight, everything is really nice.
yeah.
Wow.
doing my Indian stuff.
Ah. We could hear you were in sync there.
Indians drink in a steel glass or a little steel glass, and that's what I'm drinking.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Smells good.
Those are handy, aren't they? Where can you get those?
Either Master Wu's site,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is masterwu.net, and pretty sure they're on Amazon also.
Did either of you guys have reactions to that tea on Sunday? I felt it was very powerful. It stuck with me.
Huh.
I got home and I felt a little shaky all of a sudden.
Oh, wow.
That over caffeinated thing happening.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, never really felt that other than with like a large cup of black tea or something. But
Yeah. I didn't. That tea tends to be mild, enjoyable for me, the
Yeah.
caffeine aspect of it.
Yeah, I didn't. It was funny because the whole sit, I didn't have any experience like with the whole drive home. And then I got home and I was thinking, what is going on? I had to work my way out of it.
Yeah.
Probably largely more over-caffeinated than you are generally. Just by like a constant level of tea throughout the day.
Maybe. I drink coffee, but
Yep.
I don't know.
It's also kind of a changeable day in terms of like
Yeah.
the weather. Like there was a moment where the sun came out and it was really kind of intensely hot.
It's
A
probably, it
little
was,
bit physically strange to adjust to.
I asked if you guys felt it because I felt it was probably just my own
I see, yeah.
chemistry happening.
Yeah.
When I injured my finger years ago, I took serapeptase for quite a while, and I found that very
Huh.
helpful.
Cool.
Yeah, the swelling went way down from it, and I had this bone had grown quite large while I was a rock climber, and that shrunk
Well,
during the time I was taking it. Pretty interesting.
yeah.
What's it called?
Serapeptase.
What's it?
Yeah, it's interesting substance derived from silkworms traditionally. Not from the worms, from what they produce.
Yeah, what they produce, yeah. Although people do eat worms and insects, right?
Sure, yeah.
What part of the silkworm does it come from?
No, I'll leave it up to your imagination.
That's my point.
Well, anything coming up in day-to-day practice? Either experience of practice or questions along with the study? Or
Well, I got a picture I get these pictures.
Sure.
It was today with the prayer and the existence and non-existence.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I just saw this as a way of my understanding it. If it even makes any sense, you need to say if I'm off the track or not. But I just got a moving fractal, and just spiraling, and the thing that moved it was the relationship of existence and non-existence, that it just keeps, it's joined, and it just keeps spiraling into this living fractal of existence. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice image, and it fits in well with
So it does fit as an idea for that?
the yin and yang
Mm-hmm.
aspect there, and the perpetual transformation, and all of the myriad possibilities.
Yeah, and it just can't be separated. It's part of the whole. It just and the way it functions is to be that way.
Yep. It's a good visualization of the principles. It's good reading it, that newest one out loud. In my mind, I had gone much smoother if it played out in person out loud.
I'm sorry to say that I was very careful about adjusting the levels, but I forgot to press record
Oh,
until that one. So I missed the smoothness of the beginning. Caught the new scripture at least. But caught the tail end of the previous one.
Thank you.
Hopefully I won't get in trouble.
This one works pretty well. Doesn't have the spaciousness of that one.
I found it incredibly strenuous to move today. I don't know, just like a real feeling of kind of heaviness
Mhm.
and sort of inertia throughout the practice.
Would, for you, is that, do you find that is associated with rainy days, or?
I haven't
Not
observed
necessarily.
it. I mean, it
Yeah.
occurred to me today that
Sure.
that might be there, but felt like a kind of culmination of a tiredness that's been there, kind of as a baseline, but the energy of the day kind of allows it to really emerge rather than to continue
Yeah.
powering through that.
Right.
Wasn't necessarily uncomfortable, just I hadn't experienced that previously with the practice at any point.
Yeah.
Real kind of bodily sense or of just wanting to be still.
Yep. Yeah, there can be kind of a stability to that, even though it feels like, on one hand, it might be a compression or a heaviness, but it's also kind of a levelness to it that can be interesting.
I think I had the feeling that if we had done shaking before, it might have kind of subtly altered the state in a way
Sure.
that would have made movement feel different.
Yeah.
But it's sort of that transition felt like it led towards just kind of continuing to be very heavy.
Yeah.
In a kind of stone-like way or a rooted way.
Yeah.
Felt very happy to have rain starting this morning when I woke up.
Yeah.
Good day for it.
Have you been watering plants? Is that why you're happy?
That might factor
Admit
into
it.
it a little bit.
I know the relief. 400, 600 odd not thirsty plants.
Yeah, there are self-illuminating days and there are self-watering days.
Sometimes after the practice, when I sit after the visualization, and that sit feels, it takes me some time to settle into it, as opposed to having, in theory, I feel like sometimes it does feel this way, that I've been keyed into it and it's a little more clear. But sometimes, today included, it feels as if the practice is distracting the sit a little bit almost, and I'm having to there's a lot of feeling in my body from it, and it's a settling that takes time. If that is just the way I'm doing it, the practice itself, or yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a stage of the relationship to the practice. That, what it accomplishes is this harmonization, but it accomplishes that through movement. And,
there's turbidity in it. Let's put it that way. And it feels like a settling can take a while.
I see, yeah.
Something about that, and it's just, maybe it's me building my ability to be relaxed in breath holds and letting, each of these moments be clear in and of themselves. Sometimes that's easy and it comes out, and I am a little more settled from it, and sometimes it leaves me a little turbid.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of main benefits we get from perpetual dailiness is that we get so two things are happening there, right? We get out of that phase. Two things are happening. One is the effectiveness of the practice, and then there kind of can be a layer on top of it that we bring to it. And the effectiveness of the practice is accumulating regardless of the additional stuff we bring to it. And after a while it takes over, and that's what's happening. Sometimes you get this, and sometimes, most of the time you don't.
That's a nice description. Yeah, because it isn't as if, the time. There is that seems to be an inconsistent kind of thing that comes and goes. But I do also feel the practice has taken on its own momentum.
Yeah.
So it's a nice feeling.
Yep. Great. So let's look at some details for Ding Fire. We looked at Bing, right? And then we didn't get further. So I'll read Master Wu's translation here. Ding Fire, gentle within, inner character bright and earnest, embraces Yi with piety, devoted to Run. So Yi is the yin wood, Run is the yang water. Blazing but not dangerous, diminishes without dying out. So the different ways of understanding its the gentleness of fire. Fire on the one hand, but gentle on the other hand. With its blood mother, peaceful in autumn and winter. So gentle within. Master Wu says the quality of yin fire is soft. It feels warm and comfortable. As opposed to the blazing heat of yang fire, Bing. One wouldn't want to carry this too far, but it is kind of sometimes compared to candlelight as opposed to sunlight. There's a kind of intimacy to it. Inner character bright and earnest. Ding Fire qualities include virtuous, open-hearted, and charitable. Inner character here is Xing. It's kind of original nature kind of quality, true quality, which in itself has a kind of ding, a kind of hidden light character to it. But also even just in the word choices here, Nei Xing, Nei inner, Xing is inner nature, or that essential character. Even separately on its own, the inwardness here is part of Ding. bright and earnest, shining, sincere. Embraces ye with piety. Master Wu says, typically in the 5-element parent-child relationship, the child element, so what gives birth to what? Wood gives birth to fire, and so fire is the child of wood. The child element will drain some amount of energy from the parent. In a natural, intuitive way, you're creating it out of yourself, so you're giving energy. However, yin wood, has a special relationship to ding fire, one that is similar to that of a kind stepmother or a doting nanny. If there's a situation in which yi wood is together with ding fire, ding's gentle fire will warm up the wood and support its function, as opposed to draining wood's energy. So one can think of that in sort of a plant nourishing aspect as opposed to a like firewood, blazing fire consumption relationship. Devoted to Run. Interesting. In general, fire and water oppose each other. An exception to this general rule is found in the case of Ding and Run. When these two come together, they may transform into the wood element. And the wood will feed the fire. Yeah, so the He, the first character of this 4-character line, is merge or harmonize or unify, come together with. And Run is the second character there. The third character is kind of therefore, and the fourth character is the top radical is center, and the bottom radical is heart, and that's what Master Wu is translating as devotion. So the harmonization, the merging with water, leads to or causes this inner fire. The heart radical is related to the fire radical. So it's blazing but not dangerous. Ding can have a very strong energy without burning its surroundings. A strong Ding person, for example, could be an exceptional leader, powerful but not overbearing. Diminishes without dying out. There's a kind of constancy to it as opposed to the big fire of being daytime and then absent in the night. The blood with its, so this is a pair at the next line. So with its blood mother, peaceful in autumn and winter. The blood mother of Ding is Jia wood. Peaceful in autumn and winter. Autumn is metal, winter is water. Both metal and water typically deplete fire. Metal is controlled by fire, and so it's using fire's energy to control it, shape it. And water controls fire, and so it is deep. It is, in a way, forcefully depleted, put out, quenched by fire. However, when Ding fire is supported by its mother, Jia wood, it can maintain its strength in environments dominated by either metal or water. So the strong support of strong wood prevents its depletion in these conditions that are normally depleting.
Does that mean that any time there's a relationship of control, the controlling element is sort of depleted by that?
Yep. Because it's using energy to... And that's true of the generation also, just in... which is part of the natural phasing, right? So, you know, this strong energy gives birth to this strong energy, and in that process, you know, necessarily is kind of a depletion of this and an accumulation of that. Sort of like the yin-yang symbol.
Control doesn't imply for the controlled element a similar diminishment. It's something more
so
akin to kind of shaping.
depends on the element. So with water and fire, it usually is a diminishment in a sort of literal water puts out fire kind of way, or cools the heat. Metal and wood, it's more of a shaping. Fire and metal, it's more of a shaping.
You said at one point that something was reversed on the chart you handed out. And then,
It is there in fire, yeah. I think it's the organs on the fire section there. The heart should be yin.
Okay. That's right.
I don't think I have it. Oh, I do have it. Yeah. Yep. Both sides. It's correct in the body column there, just wrong in the organ.
Oh, yeah.
does nature always find its equilibrium, even when you've got mad scientists letting loose things in the environment that are so out of balance with nature?
So, yes, eventually. But that balance might be extinction, you know. I mean, it might achieve that balance through an extinction cycle or something. So it may not be how we want it to be. But the pattern...
I thought we were going back to Ma and Pa and all the kids and grandparents living on the farm together. Isn't that the natural order?
Well, that would be nice, I think,
Well,
with the horses and the carts.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the helpful things to kind of catch in our mental habits is the habit of considering ourselves outside of nature, outside of the system, outside of the pattern. And we aren't, and so so it will self-correct one way or the other. I recently read The Overstory by Richard Powers, and many of you have heard me recommend it. Overstory being a reference, on the one hand, to the tree overstory, the canopy. But also the big arc perspective is not one in which the trees lose. It's one in which their absence starves. It's they're killers, and then they regenerate through dormant seeds or whatever. So it kind of, it's not a punchline dependent story, so I'm not ruining it for you, but the kind of ending observation of one of the scientists who's key in the narrative is that it's not the trees she's worried about.
Well, Mother Earth is alive and she'll regenerate herself no matter what, I guess, right? That's the big picture.
Yeah, or so, the orientation is less Mother Earth than Mother Earth, Father Heaven, the fundamental yin and yang.
Yeah, the system.
The system, the pattern continues in the pattern of the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those forever things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Seeds can sleep for a long time.
You said previously that there's no kind of deterministic playing out of the pattern that sort of empties out agency. So that doesn't mean that...
You mean the great cycles that happen, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I just remember sort of the question of kind of agency coming up, and within the context of a sense of like things may be re-equilibrated through extinction doesn't necessarily mean that that is the way things will run their course. Like that there is a reciprocity in being part of the system that means that change is always possible. And
Well, so just to, so I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that that I analyze the pattern and I see extinction as part of it.
yeah. Just I'm sort of thinking
so-
of the hypotheticals.
Yeah, so an extension of what I mentioned a minute ago of practicing integrating these concepts results in a better understanding of our lack of separation from the system and the pattern. The ultimate consequence of that patterning is that it's doesn't allow for intervention by some will that's outside of the pattern. There's no outside of the pattern, and so there's really no place for agency to reside.
The aliens aren't going to save us.
Maybe they will, but they'll be in the pattern. But
Oh, golly.
so I mean, so it's not as if something we do won't help change what we see as the future we're heading toward to be a better future that we're heading toward. It's that choice and that feeling of making a choice and all of those thoughts that led us to arrive at making those choices are also part of the pattern. So it's not so much throw up your hands, it's do what you do and use your understanding of this pattern integration to feel bright and light and wondrous about it all, whichever direction it goes, as a tool for liberation. And there's some in sort of science and psychology, and where those things sometimes meet meditation and meditation teachers. People like Sam Harris and Gary, forget, I'm a fan of his, but I'm forgetting his last name. Point out that that there is a time gap between doing something and the perception of having chosen to do that thing, that removes the possibility of that choice having been the source of that movement, of that doing. I think that's I think that can be a fun thing to think about, but I think that they're not identifying. They're identifying subjectivity with something that's pretty frontal, as opposed to a broader awareness.
is a role for unintended consequences that I don't think I've ever considered before. In the sense that I've thought about what we do here in you know, as you know, launched on a path of Taoist understanding of the world, and I've thought about it in a kind of a mechanistic way. So if you do certain things that we consider consonant with the path of Taoism, that we would call virtuous, I guess, that we will bring things into balance. So a good act, you know, sort of has an effect on what we see as imperfections. And, you know, if, you know, our leaders are not just, our actions can make them act in a more just way and return balance. But I think I've just been thinking about this in an awfully simplistic and mechanistic way, and maybe part of that is baked into the whole viewpoint of thinkers, 8,000 years ago in China, who had a certain investment in what they saw as, the way things should be in the world, and and maintaining a status quo, and how do you get back to that, and actually it seems like more like the Wild West, and I forget his name, who's running around. He's one of the agency heads involved with the environment, and he's telling everybody, well, more CO2 is good because, it makes a nicer environment for the trees. So global warming and climate change is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think a lot about climate change in terms of how we contribute to the world through our expanding our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So that just seems like, if I don't, swat that mosquito, then, maybe the temperature will stay a little bit lower. It's almost that simplistic. But, there's you know what I'm saying.
Well, I do, but there's a few simultaneous things that are a little bit hard to separate in there, and so one of them is that we have a model, a kind of behavioral model that's a little bit like Newtonian physics. It's like it works insofar as it works,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't explain everything, and it doesn't always work. But general and specific relativity are closer to always working than Newtonian physics, and they're much more complex and sophisticated, and so for a lot of problems, Newtonian physics and an understanding of inertia and causal interaction serves the purpose. Our behavioral model makes us feel good, makes the people around us feel good, and also as it is generated out of true wisdom and is held against experience, science-like over millennia, is in alignment with the special relativity version, the version that explains all, the wisdom version, model of reality. So so in the parts of our minds where we feel like we are individuals making choices, they're useful guidelines that bring us into alignment and condition our body and mind such that we can recognize wisdom given the opportunity. And from that place of wisdom, these virtues are not mechanistic but spontaneously arising as part of the self-nurturing cycle of nature. And so to not kill that mosquito is to recognize yourself in it and be compassionate toward, without choosing to be compassionate because that's the right thing to do, but to be naturally inclusive in your heart orientation to existence, is to not swat the mosquito, So I think we, end up needing to be able to use all the different levels of model, the coarse ones, the Newtonian physics analogy, that have, black and white or red, green, yellow, white and blue, clearly delineated answers to any given question, like do not kill, do not steal, but there's an infinite amount of particularity, subtlety available there to any behavior we might choose to do. I mean, we might build a temple, but in the process we kill hundreds of critters without knowing or trying, of course. The frogs get run over and, things lose their home, So I think the clearly delineated model, the simplistic model, the coarse model, maintains utility even because we have to make choices rather quickly, often, until we're constantly abiding in the unified mind, and those choices we trust make themselves in the right way.
I think I'm responding to what you said, Ali, about agency. But maybe I've kind of lost the thread, but thinking that agency is never the issue because everything we do, there's agency. And that's why I have, automatic payments for my car insurance, so I don't have to go to the agency. But there's agency, but we don't typically understand all the effects of what we're doing. So, for example, just in an easy example for me is do you keep the field mode? Or do you let it go back to, you just bought some land and there's a field. If you keep it mowed, that's a choice or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, certain things are going to live there, and if you don't, certain other things are going to live there. And
Right.
there's just a whole chain of effect that
Mm-hmm.
that can happen. And so I think what you were saying earlier about extinction is always a possibility too, that in the bigger picture, what we do may not have the intended consequence of what we think of as equilibrium,
Mm-hmm.
and returning to a certain state, whereas that state is more abstract and general,
Mm-hmm.
probably,
Mm-hmm.
Or more balanced.
and doesn't necessarily include human beings.
Right.
But it may not.
Right. Well, so where does that lead you? Just
Well, it's. I think I'm just going to go back to eating more sugar and fat, and to hell with it. We don't know what we're doing anyway, so no, I don't know. It's just sort of peeling the onion, I guess, as far as understanding goes. That we continue to be, like the blind man and the elephant. We are trying to grasp something that we're never going to see the whole picture of, but you keep seeing new layers of things. Be nice if it were more like just here's your 5 colors, you know what to do, and
right.
but it's still a helpful way of organizing and helping you to think about things.
The sense is that we won't ever cognitively grasp the entirety. But that cognitive grasping isn't the only way of knowing, as far as I understand. I might as well not have said anything. I don't know. Total tautology.
There's a kind of loop available there, but
Right.
But there's no avoiding that kind of looping of the concepts as we try to essentially make the space for seeing or being directly. And so there's on the one hand, there's a kind of wordless knowing, and on the other hand, there's being without words, and that being is aware and knowing. And so on a certain level, one begins to have a wisdom relationship to experience. And then on another level, that unity mind is not so much known as recognized as itself, and that's inclusive of your subjectivity. But in the same way that, habits of movement, like leaning on your knee, that kinks in your spine. You have habits of mind that lead to kinks and restriction in your mind, and if we bring your body and your mind into alignment, then you're removing things between things that ensnare you, things that hold you. Like each little kink is like a knot in the net that ensnares you, keeps your subjectivity chasing around desires and repulsions. Then as we organize our minds with these ideas, we cutting away, unraveling those knots so that it's not between us and our true us. But also we do it it's not so much about the useful or uselessness of our actions or our practice, but we do it, I think, in the end because for the same reason that a planet turns toward the sun. It's not. It's just natural, self-nourishing orientation toward growth, fruition, and return. Did that video die?
The battery's low. It's still running.
Okay, great.
I think you used this is another subject. In your new translation, did you use the word pervasion?
Probably.
Is that something you coined, or is that a actual? I was wondering if you meant pervasiveness, or but I thought you probably didn't.
Well, that's a good question. I may have. It feels like a word to me. I may be
I just
combining.
Wondered what was your
pervade and
concept anyway, and it's that you're using it to convey.
It feels like a word to me. Is that not a word?
I don't know.
It would be, pervade and infuse. All my devices are in use, but for dictionaries. But does that sound out of place to anybody else? Pervasion. It's a word. The definition is in Chinese, but could switch. Yeah, pervasion is the noun. Pervade throughout.
Yeah, so pervasiveness would be the quality of pervasion.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I just it wasn't a word I'd ever heard before.
I made it up and it exists.
Because you made it up. I'm trying to relate that to something you said earlier about some authors you were talking about who talked about the gap between the concept and the action.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the action couldn't actually exist because of your instigation of it.
Well, that was around the agency, right? So the
so
choice to act, it's an illusion that the choice comes before the act.
So you chose
Because they identify the firing neurons that cause the actual action, say, grab something, they can show that it precedes in time your idea to do it.
Oh. I was just wondering if you actually did that with the dictionary when you chose to use the...
Yeah.
This is how you become a sanctioned guru.
Right.
You mentioned before sort of having predominantly fire in your chart, and I wondered if there's ever been a discussion that maybe I haven't sort of been here for about how the day, month, hour, and year sort of determine what predominates, and how an understanding of that connects with these dynamics and the dynamics that Master Wu is outlining. And I know it's like extremely nuanced as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking, but it be laid out.
Well, I mean, like any of these things, there's a overview as well. So the stem, the heavenly stem that we're studying here, of the day, is considered the primary self. It's called the self element, the primary determination of kind of who and how you are. But then the details are informed by the relationships between that self and all of these different ways that the elements interact, that we're looking at here. And so I'm being fire, and so to the extent that I have wood, it's supported, and earth, it's productive, and water, it's restrained, and the proximity of those things, where they are in the chart, depends the level of influence. The other elements in the chart, there are opportunities for other elements to transform each other, and thus, fire and yang fire and yin metal next to each other become water, and so what might have been productive becomes restraint, and so there's subtlety and complexity to how it actually plays out, but your self element is the heavenly stem of the day. And then ideally you've got a little bit of everything, and everything's cycling smoothly. Nobody does, but just and then there are kind of special case charts, which mine is one where fire predominates, and seeking balance through other elements, which is the usual thing, is not the recommended approach. Instead, it's feeding fire with fire. And so that's true of the other special charts, being of each element, where one is so dominant that controlling or draining or restraining in these various ways is counterproductive. And it's also, as Master Wu and Phil say, it's not mechanical. So things change, and under certain temporal influences, that way of my chart, for example, could change and could be more beneficial to be balanced in these other ways with these other elements.
So is the day stem that's the self? That's the whatever the day is the day for everybody. You know,
It's the day for everybody on that day.
on that day in
Yeah.
that and in that time zone, I guess, if you want
Yeah, the sun's shining. Yeah,
to. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that day and that time zone would be saying the same thing, right?
But
So
I
the day's not
mean,
gonna
conceivably, it could be a different day in China than it is.
Right, but
Here.
it's a different day, not
So
just a
the-
different time.
So then
Yeah.
it's a different stem.
Yeah. Right.
So where you are makes a difference too.
Well, the day is
As to
just the day.
if you were talking to somebody on the phone, this is
Well, it's
You
not
like your
a,
counterfactual.
you know,
no, like if you call. If
you're not the
if-
first to wrestle with that. So,
Let's say you called up from Dragon Caves on your cell phone and you said, I'm having a problem and I want to think about this, and your day then is not my day here.
mhm. If it's my problem, then it's my day that we're.
Yeah, but I mean, I would have to be thinking about it in terms of your day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I'm just trying to kind of see.
So what's identified by the day is the sun's presence, right? And its position in the cycle. So the chi of the sun, the moon, the planets, these are all cycling with the day. So somehow our calendars are, I mean, it would be possible that it could be a much bigger mess than it is, you know. But I think we answered. So it's not a different day somewhere else. It's just what the day is.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, you know, you do have to remove daylight savings and stuff. Like it's the relationship to the sun that counts. But even in its most simple form, like knowing what your day stem is and what somebody else's is, or the season, or that kind of thing, can inform your understanding of your own experience. So the first thing that you might do to begin to understand is identify your day stem, and then identify whether it's strong, neutral, or weak. And so it's strong if it's supported by the season. For example, one of the fire in summer is supported, wood in spring is supported. That gets complicated quickly, but that's the basic orientation. It's like, is your day element being supported or worked against? And that will help you understand your experience or your pattern in life.
And the dynamics that Master Wu is describing of the kind of nuances of support or of drawing of energy are the same ultimately as the one that you would use to understand the relations of support or of.
Yep, that's right. So your first Newtonian approach would be not this, but just the basic control and generation relationships. And then these reveal the subtleties and show you how it's not mechanical.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and just move through this yang earth in the couple minutes we have left here. Wu, earth, solid and heavy, centered and upright, still and closed, moving and open. Commands 10,000 things, all things. When nourished by water, life flows. So you can picture a soil for those who are in charge of watering gardens. That's a very clear literal structure there. When parched by fire, illness follows. So the yellowing, dying plants due to excess heat. When combined with gun, mountain, or kun, earth, it's pushed around if unstable. So let's look at the details on these. So solid and heavy describes the basic character, as does stable, centered, and upright, both in the sense of integrity, honor, and physical sense as well. Still and closed, moving and open. Closed here, just reading Master Wu, is used to represent the yin tranquil state, whereas open refers to the yang activity state. The solidity of yang earth expresses itself along the continuum between dedication and stubbornness. Yang earth is difficult to change once it has set its course, can be unmovable in some situations and unstoppable in others. So that's a nice explanation. Does that make sense to everybody? It commands the 10,000 things. Young Earth has the power to support or destroy all existence. Being central, pivotal. When nourished by water, life flows. Wu Yang Earth, which is the earthly branch, needs nourishment. Oh, that's actually a typo. It does intend the stem. Needs nourishment from water in order to bring forth its vibrancy, its new life energy. When parched by fire, illness follows. Fire dries up earth to the point of deprivation. Combined with gun or kun, some detail there with combined that we may want to tease out. So in astrology, the trigram Gun mountain is sometimes used to represent the earthly branch Yin, which is wood, springtime energy, initial, and Kun is sometimes used to represent Shen, which is monkey, which is initial fall energy. Metal, yang metal. This verse, completed by the following line, tells us what to expect if Wu, again that's a typo, it's meant to be the stem, not the branch, is paired with Yin or Shen. Pushed around if unstable. Wood controls earth. Earth gives birth to metal. When Wu is paired with Yin, wood, not Yin wood, but Yin, tiger, earthly branch, initial spring energy, or Shen, not spirit, but monkey, initial fall energy, it becomes unstable and lacking a strong rootedness. In this circumstance, unless Wu is anchored by other supporting elements, it will crumble. Hopefully I'll get to the opportunity to get the time to translate these. I think there's some other dynamics going on there as well that would help clarify, not different from what Master Wu was saying, just help clarify what is meant there. But for now, that's what we've got. So let's not do yin earth right now. Just let the ones we've done sink in. So even with the commentary and the poem, there's some complexity there if you were wanting to go to some depth with it. You could, spend some time with each line and make sure you understand each one, and then practice with the form. And, cycle the practice and knowledge and understanding. Let's see where it leads. Well, before we wrap, is there anything from that or anything else lingering that you want to talk or think about?
Fairly overwhelming.
Yeah, it's really this, looking at this, the subtlety part is kind of dependent on the other things already being, the basic qualities being familiar and comfortable already. So it's a little too much on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think maybe useful to be exposed to when you're way into establishing the qualities of the basic qualities of each of the 10. Cool. Well, let's wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.